Hey guys, how's it going? Valid Venture Investing here today. So today we're going to be talking about Tesla. We're going to be talking about the Tesla event that just occurred. It was actually the investor event. Then I'm going to give you a little update of what happened with the securities that I bought of Tesla. Did I add to it? Did I not? We're going to go through that. And I'm just going to go through a couple things I found interesting in the presentation. So let's take a look at the stock right now. We saw it pull back a little bit today, about down 3.6%, but it's been on a pretty big tear over the last little bit. As I told you guys in my last video, I was looking at buying it at about 180, and I think it dropped to like 177, 178. So I did buy more, very small amount, because I already have a position in Tesla. I think it's like $2,300 worth or something like that. So I'm up significantly already, so it was a good buy. I gave you guys some of the reasons that I thought it was a good buy before, and now I'm definitely, have some confirmation that it definitely was a good buy, even though I'm down a lot on my initial position that I have. So some of the things that I found very interesting in this event and why I think we saw the stock so big up after hours, although it was down today, was the biggest one was demand, right? So this has been the thing that basically the narrative that has been talked about in the media. It's been talked about financial markets. Where's the demand? They're saying that the demand is, faltering. Well, Elon basically put everyone's minds at ease with this. He said that demand is higher than supply. So basically, they're selling as many cars as they can, and they keep ramping up production. So as long as you can believe what he says there, that really made investors feel a lot more comfortable on the demand side of things. Again, we've heard this before as well, the revenue, how much Tesla makes per car. But he was saying the Model 3 is actually being the highest revenue sales car in history. And if you take a look at this right here, it's actually outselling like all the big car manufacturers like Toyota Camry, Honda Civic, all these big boys, right? So when you compare the high demand with the highest price, it doesn't get much better than that, right? So again, the question at this point is whether they can keep doing that demand. That's why they're working on the Shanghai factory, which is coming up extremely fast. That's going to help with some of the tariffs in China, making it a little bit cheaper. So you got to keep in mind that a lot of Chinese consumers are actually, holding off their purchases, and that's a huge market for Tesla because, it could be, $10,000 cheaper or something like that for them, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. This is something that, there's always, the negative connotation with electric cars, which is, range anxiety. So they're saying they're hitting record range, so they're continually working on it. So even though they might not be, releasing like a brand new Model S or anything like that, they're still working on the underlying technology, of course, and like the self-driving technology as well, like we saw in the Investor Day video that I made a little while ago, a couple weeks ago now, I think. So now the record range they've seen is 370 miles. So that's huge. Tesla actually even talks about the fact that none of the competitors have been able to match Tesla's range on the Model S, the first Model S that they made as of this point. So I have talked about demand before, I've been concerned about it, but he's right. None of the ranges have matched, and that's a key thing. Also with range is, I'll skip down here, is the supercharger locations. Now this is a point I found very interesting. They're basically updating this to, I believe it's a third generation, and they're saying that you get 75 miles in 5 minutes. So that's a big huge thing for me. Like I figured that probably my next vehicle would be an electric vehicle, right? But there's been some circumstances where I thought, well, I don't really have time. It's so much easier just to charge it to fill up your gas tank, right? But if you're looking at 5, double that, 10 minutes to get that kind of range, that's a huge selling point, and that's going to really drive the masses towards electric vehicles. Another key point here is they're saying they're finally getting the Trans-Canada Highway. Probably a lot of you guys watching this are not really interested in this because, I'm from Canada here. But that's huge for up in Canada here because that would be one of my concerns if I'm driving down the coast or the other way, is that there's nowhere, there's no charging locations. You can make it on, the new 370 miles. But then the concern is when you're coming back or whatever. So He gives a lot of information here about the supercharger locations, and this infrastructure is just vital, and it's nice to see that they're really working on that. Another very interesting point was he's saying that the Model Y is expected to be more than the S, the 3, and the X. Yes, looks like something, right? Combined, right? So that shows you the kind of demand they're talking about, and they keep talking about underscoring the demand, meaning that they're setting internal goals that are higher than what they're telling us, right? So that's a good way to be. It's a good way of being conservative. And so this is the crossover market, right? So that's kind of one of the issues I've always had with Tesla, is that they're producing sedan, yet it's been incredibly successful. But, sedans are, they're not selling anymore, right? So it'd be interesting to see how this thing sells. It's a crossover, not an SUV. The market tends to seem like it's kind of going towards crossovers. I was kind of wondering why they didn't do an SUV. But to think that they have that kind of demand for that, that's pretty incredible. So they must have done some pretty interesting, some pretty extensive research into that. So we already talked about supercharge location. They talked about that. Another thing that kind of, he's talking about profitability that I found kind of interesting was he's saying it's really hard to maintain profitability when you're growing so fast. And if you're really not looking at the numbers, it's kind of hard to understand how fast they're actually growing, right? He's saying that they doubled the fleet last year. If you look into the numbers, that's true. I mean, it's a massive amount of vehicles that they are producing relative to before. And then this year, they're expecting another 60-80% of that. So if demand, is higher than supply, and they expect to grow that much, well, that could mean something really good. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot more optimism in the stock right now. The thing I'm most interested about, and the thing that Elon seems to be most interesting about, is the pickup event. So he's saying it's likely at the end of summer. So that's something very interesting. That could be a point that actually moves the stock. I'm going to hold on to my position at least until the end of summer, I believe. The additional position I took that I'm up on now. But he's, he wants to talk about it. You can tell he was extremely excited about it during this. He described it as seeing something that, it being something like futuristic. When you see it driving down the road, you think it's from a sci-fi movie set. So that's really interesting because, the other vehicles, they look nice, but they're being relatively conservative, right? He also stated, I believe there was a question, that it's expected to tow to match or exceed the F-150. So that's kind of interesting when you look in terms of Rivian, partnering with Ford for the F-150. That's going to be the competition. Rivian's going to be out before them, I believe, but this could, depending on what it looks like and the capability of it and such, the range, which he's saying is going to be amazing, that could be a real driver of the stock. Another really interesting one I saw was he's saying, he said it kind of in a jokingly way, but talking about mining, like we might get into the mining business, which I think would be a big mistake. Could have been a joke, but he's basically, noting that there's so much demand, they need so many materials that they might have to do that. He spoke about the batteries, why they built the Gigafactory, because when they looked into the amount of batteries they need to produce their cars, it was more than was produced on Earth at the time. So that's why if you look into the Gigafactory, you can see the massive amount of batteries that are built there, and that's of course with the help of Panasonic. And now you're seeing the integration with Maxwell. Well, we're not seeing it yet. We're all very interested to see how that's going to work out. Very interested to see that as well. Now, the most important thing I think of this entire presentation was this right here: shot at a record quarter, right? So obviously if you were following along all the other things that have been said, you could definitely infer that. But he says it might be a record quarter, if not, very close. So obviously that's going to be something very positive for the company. So, on the closing note here, I think it's kind of funny the narrative that we saw that brought the stock down. It almost seems like, someone's trying to bring the stock down, or, it's, all analysts go on the same side, just to herd together. It's very interesting. Now we're seeing these articles come out today that I've seen talking about, basically what I just said, shot at a record quarter, talking about different things that you definitely wouldn't be seeing, before, and now you're seeing all this positivity in the market again. So I think that's definitely something that's going to propel it up a bit more. So I wanted to make a quick video for you guys today. If you hadn't watched it, it was a pretty long event. I would recommend it though. It was very insightful and, kind of give you some insight into where Tesla is going. So that's going to be it for today, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.